I declare open this public hearing of the House Standing Committee on Industry, Innovation and Science for its inquiry into the current state of the Australian tyre industry and challenges and opportunities for the industry within the context of a circular economy. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, to pay my respects to elders past and present. I remind all witnesses that given evidence to the committee they are protected by parliamentary privilege. It is unlawful for anyone to threaten or disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and as such may be treated by the Parliament as contempt. In accordance with the committee's resolution of 6 August 2025, this hearing will be recorded and broadcast on the Parliament's website, and proof of official transcripts of proceedings will be published on the Parliament's website. I also remind members of the media who may be present or listening on the web of the need to fairly and accurately report the proceedings of the committee. So I now welcome our representative from Bridgestone Australia to give evidence at the public hearing today. For the Hansard record, could you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear?
Sure, my name is Joanne Hayes. I'm Head of Corporate Affairs for Bridgestone Australia New Zealand, and I'm here today representing Bridgestone Australia Limited.
Thank you. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. So I now invite you to make an opening statement, please, Ms Hayes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for the opportunity to be here today and the time that you're spending on this inquiry. I would like to start by saying that I am here representing Bridgestone Australia Limited only, and that my remarks today are in relation to passenger, truck and bus tyres, with OTR mining tyres a separate Bridgestone business. A very quick intro on Bridgestone. In Australia, we are the market leader in tyres, supplying tyres and service for over 85 years. We import new tyres, we manufacture retreaded tyres locally, and we have a network of over 360 retail stores and more than 20 retreading factories nationwide. And we directly employ more than 1,000 people. From sourcing and design, product use, reuse, through to end of life, our global focus is on reducing our impact, advancing circular solutions and creating value for society, customers and business. And we back this with significant global and local investment. In Australia, we've invested heavily in circular initiatives, including retreading infrastructure, research, voluntary product stewardship and retail network governance. We incentivise our retail network to choose responsible recyclers over low cost, and we do this to avoid poor or illegal outcomes for our tyres. We've been voluntary contributors to the Tyre Stewardship Australia since its creation, and we acknowledge the important role that TSA have played in the sector. We've also spent over 10 years helping to shape New Zealand's Tyre-wise product stewardship scheme, and have now experienced how a mandatory model can strengthen system performance. However, after more than a decade, despite these efforts, in Australia we are at a crossroads and we cannot see a way to progress without your intervention. I'd like to reiterate that this inquiry is taking place in the context of a circular economy, and while the industry may quote high recovery rates that exceed national waste targets, we should still acknowledge that close to 80% of that material is exported for incineration or energy recovery. So although positive recovery appears as no market failure, in the context of a circular economy, the system is not aligned nor performing against global statistics. While progress has been made, the current system that we experience still lacks sufficient governance. It allows free riders to persist, exposes retailers to poor practice operators, with many retailers being small business owners, and it does not adequately prevent illegal dumping or stockpiling. Unaware consumers are also paying inconsistent recycling costs for inconsistent outcomes. Ultimately, this is about the industry delivering a consistent, safe and transparent outcomes for consumers and communities across Australia. In 2025 alone, we estimate that more than $22 million was spent on recycling Bridgestone tyres in Australia, yet most of that investment leads to offshore, lower value outcomes, which is hard to reconcile. but there is little alternative or support in the system to do better. And the system misalignment is also evident in retreading. Truck and bus tyre retreading remains one of the highest order recovery pathways, a 75% recycled product. Yet it operates in a system with limited support and no incentive to choose better. As a result, the retread market is declining, displaced by lower quality, lower cost imports. These market dynamics sadly undermine circularity, driving shorter lifespans and increased waste. A lower upfront cost is attractive, particularly for businesses managing short-term cash flow, but reflects a system that favours upfront cost over life cycle value. In other jurisdictions, we see policy settings actively supporting better outcomes. In California, we see government agency procurement favour circularity, and in the United States federally, tax incentives for retreaded tyres have been proposed to support circularity. In Australia, there is currently no comparable mechanism to support a circular system. So to close off, the industry continues to face the same challenges it has for many years: free riders, poor practice operators, limited governance and no clear incentive to drive circularity, resulting in a high percentage export reliance, illegal dumping and stockpiling, and inconsistent costs and outcomes for consumers. We believe a mandatory scheme similar to New Zealand's TyreWise model would address these issues, particularly when combined with supportive circular procurement policies and incentive. Such a system can support full participation, improve transparency and deliver consistent beneficial outcomes, treating tyres as a managed resource as soon as they enter the country. As concerns grow around our risk of reliance on voluntary contributions and high offshore recovery, we remain unable to shift the dial. Brisbane is committed to being part of the solution, but meaningful progress can now only come through coordinated, regulated, system-wide action. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. I'll just check, have we got the member for Bradfield on the line?
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good to hear your voice. I'll start off with a question. We had this discussion too yesterday, and thank you for yesterday. It was actually a lot of fun to go through and see how tyre retreading is done. I think we all learnt quite a little bit from that, which was fantastic. But you talk about how the current system in submission favours low order outcomes, such as export for incineration, TDF, that sort of thing. What are the commercial drivers you think that are behind that outcome across the supply chain?
I think there's a very good national supply chain at the moment. It's there and it works and we're reliant on it. And I think there's no supporting policy, and a lot of those suppliers are looking to utilise those materials within the country, but there's a lack of support and there's contributing factors that don't support that. So I think commercially there is absolutely a need for the export, and there is a need for the TDF because there's no supporting factors to drive that circularity within our own country. So I think at the moment it's a commercial need, but we're up against rubber crumb being imported into our country when we have it here because it's a lower cost. So there's nothing to combat or support that, to use our materials within our own country.
And in the submission you talk about a preferred status for the way product is. How could you sort of see something like that working? Is it, taxation incentives, or is it regulation do you think needs to change to focus on saying, well, if we talk about a circular economy, retreading is obviously a circular economy in casings and that, but product that can be used over and over again. How do you sort of see you develop and deliver something that puts more emphasis on a higher value, true recycling as opposed to changing an end-of-life product?
I definitely don't think it's one answer. It's not one change, that's for sure. But I think when we look at some of the activities that are taking place in the USA with whether they be tax incentives or procurement policy changes for government agencies, they're supporting the system without changing what is coming into the country, because when we look at our local ADRs, there's no element of circularity in there, and perhaps there can't be in the future. I don't know. I don't design those, but without those sorts of changes, then we can change the system internally to encourage people to make those choices to drive local circularity.
So when we talk about government procurement, you mean we should have a focus on saying
earlier this week, and if we wanted to add tyres, which we didn't have any, it was $80 per tyre to put. So if I was someone that did have tyres, what would I do with those? You know, personally, I know what I would do because of the industry I'm in, but it's what's my option? And I've used the example of the New Zealand scheme before. If I was in New Zealand, I would have an option. I would go and I would drop those off at a collection centre with no charge.
And that's a big decision for a lot of families.
Absolutely.
If they've got them, and people have them under the house and all sorts of things. And
Yeah.
where do you put them for everyday mums and dads out there?
Absolutely.
Is a real question.
Yeah.
If-
there's only so many white swans you can make out of it?
But $80, I was mortified by that.
yeah. yeah.
Which then leads to people dumping them illegally, and then
Yeah.
councils pick up the
Yeah.
$25, $40.
And I don't think they know what to do with them otherwise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's the other one I want to ask about? Sorry, I've got 3 different pages I'm looking at. Because I was reading through this morning.
Your opening statement was very comprehensive too.
Yeah, it sort of covered a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of my stuff. But it was a great visit there yesterday. Like, we learnt a lot and seeing all the different machinery in place, and the workforce culture seemed really good when
Yes.
we got there too. Everyone was laughing and having a great
Yeah.
time at work, which was really nice.
They're
to
a
see.
really passionate team. They're a great team.
You could feel that, yeah.
Good.
There,
Thank you.
yeah.
I was going to ask about procurement mandates for crumb rubber and other recycled materials in government projects. Is that sort of looking more in the... So when we talk about other products, we're talking like floor matting and conveyor belts and this sort of thing, or just... And obviously we talked about bus companies in particular,
Yep.
being state-owned enterprises. Do you sort of, have you done research on, get tyre X, put it on, it runs out at 200,000 k's or whatever, then how long you can do, how many sort of recaps you can do onto those tyres, and the fuel savings, that sort of thing with going through that system to be able to go forward and say, well, you can buy a tyre for $400, change it every 2 years, or through a recap process, you will save X amount in the product, but also with changing tread patterns and things that you can use, particularly on trailing axles, and how that saves the dollar-wise of fuel economy and the likes.
Yes, absolutely. So we've got data. We conducted a full life cycle assessment on the retread process, so we understand the reduction of both waste through reusing the case, and also the carbon emissions that we save on that. And when we do the testing of a retread, we do a like-for-like tread. So if we've got a new tyre, we've got a number of our popular truck tyres that we will match that tread in a retread. We'll test that to make sure the performance is comparable. And if it's a fuel-saving tread or tyre, then that absolutely saves fuel on the road as well. We've got numerous tests that show that too. So absolutely testing. And our larger fleet customers, they know that information. They want that information from us, so we can give them carbon emission savings, waste savings. They're using it in their annual reports. But I think it's the smaller businesses that aren't measuring such great amount of information within their business. They don't necessarily understand that life value of the product. It's more about what they're paying on the day.
Yeah. So with your fuel saving tyre, is it sort of 2, 3, 5% savings you might get on those?
So it depends on application.
Yep.
And it also depends on the combination on the vehicle. So we've done multiple and various tests over the years. Our recorded fuel saving is around 6% in fuel use. So that's by changing to a various combination. But we have achieved up to 9% in some of our independent tests as well. But on average, we state 6% fuel saving.
And we went to the tread manufacturing facility yesterday too. And again, great culture there. Everyone seemed to be really enjoying their work. What were the drivers for shutting that down? And did you explore any government assistance prior to making those decisions?
So the key drivers for shutting that down were firstly volume and factory efficiency, and then also because of the gradual reduced volume of retreading in the market, is really the competition with the cheaper imported products. So creating a model that was more competitive in the market for survival, really. So as far as government assistance, we have for the retreading factories themselves.
Oh, yep.
But we've made efficiency changes within our pre-cured tread factory, and investing more money wasn't going to change the problem that we had when we were working efficiently. It was a far bigger picture, but we've certainly achieved some government support in our retreading factories themselves, yes, which has been fantastic, really good.
Do you think that our standards for tyres need to be updated and looked at in light of cheaper, lower quality product coming in? Given, particularly if you're talking on prime movers or buses, that can lead to pretty catastrophic outcomes.
Could support.
No, I think I'm good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Appreciate that.
Pleasure.
Very informative, and again, thank you for yesterday. I think we all learnt quite a lot out of that.
Yeah, great. It's a great spot to go to.
So again, thank you for your attendance today, and if you've been asked to provide any additional information, please forward it to the Secretariat by 10 July 2026. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Great.
Is the next witness on the line yet? Or we'll suspend for 5 minutes. Thank you. time is it? 10. So I'll reconvene at 10:16. I now welcome representatives from Big Tyre to give evidence at this public hearing today by teleconference. For the Hansard record, could you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear?
Yep, I'm Daniel Loudon. I'm the CEO of Big Tyre in Toowoomba.
Terrific, thank you. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise you the hearings are a formal proceedings of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. So I now invite you to make a short opening statement.
Very good, thank you. So Big Tyre is a manufacturer of solid wheels, which may for these purposes be considered as tyres. We also repair and retread tyres, pneumatic and solid, for various industries. We're not officially a tyre recycler. We don't dispose of scrap tyres here, but we do rebuild tyres and wheels to give them a second life. So we have a significant part to play in the circular economy of this industry in Australia.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, you go.
So can you tell us a little bit about the processes for manufacturing the solid press-on tyres and also the process for manufacturing solid rubber bonded wheels for heavy-duty applications?
Sure. So the size of the press-on tyre must be very precise to ensure that it can be pressed on with a good amount of friction to the wheel underneath it. And of course, rubber changes in size based on temperature, and it is moulded at a high temperature, so it's important to get that sizing right. So there's a little bit to do there, but as far as the economics of it all, it really needs to be done at scale to be competitive, and the huge majority of press-on tyres in Australia are manufactured. Yeah, good question. I mean, I think at the end of the day, having fees that are put onto tyre recyclers or manufacturers would be challenging, which is why challenging for those businesses to put on those costs onto their products without consumers having issue with that. So the easiest way, of course, is putting it onto the imports, considering these tyres are manufactured overseas anyway, and or having a system where it's necessary to have a disposal plan in place. So diverging slightly here, I know that in South America, the continent of South America, they will not even allow someone to bring tyres in unless they already have a plan for how they're going to be dealt with at end of life. And of course, there's no such thing in Australia. But by putting in a levy on the imported tyres, if a government department could take responsibility for that revenue collection and that revenue spending, which of course would be for a very specific purpose of funding tyre recycling facilities for end of life, whether that was to help fund tyre retreading facilities, in which case Big Tyre could benefit, but that wasn't even my initial thought. It was around tyre recycling facilities that charge high prices for recycling their tyres because they have high electricity costs. And at the end of the day, it does consume a significant amount of energy to recycle a tyre. And those costs, if they're not funded by the government via a levy on the imports, then of course it all just ends up on the end consumer, making it very expensive to recycle tyres, which leads to a lot of illegal dumping.
And that would sort of level the playing field a little bit, is that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there are so many tyres that get dumped illegally. I know I can see this from our own personal experience based on the fact that we repair tyres here on a regular basis. We do Well, it'd probably be in the order of about 10 to 15 tyres per week. And we're talking about agricultural and small earth moving tyres predominantly. So they're decent sized tyres, and we will get tyres here on a semi-regular basis, at least one or two per week, where the tyres are actually not repairable. And we have to tell the customer, look, these tyres are not repairable. Would you like us to invoice you for recycling the tyre? And that's just to cover our costs because we don't recycle tyres ourselves. Of course, we have costs as a business to have that tyre recycled by another company that does recycle tyres. And when we tell our customer how much it will cost to do that, and we're not trying to make a profit on that, we're just trying to cover our own costs. And they hear the cost of it, they're like, oh, no, don't worry about it, I'll just pick it up. And the number of customers, of course, what are they going to do with it? They're taking it home. Most of them live on a large property, and the tyres will end up getting buried or burnt. And of course, both of those things are illegal. We're not the moral police. We're not here to tell our customers what they can and can't do. They're well aware of their obligations, but they also don't want to foot the bill of several $100s to have their tyre recycled. So it would remove that cost, and people would be very happy to have us dispose of their tyres if they knew that they could do it at very minimal or no cost.
Are you seeing a change in the quality of tyres that are coming in with the cheaper ones? Is it a lower quality rubber or design in them that makes them less, less of equivalence as what others are?
Yeah, look, we certainly see a very large range of quality here. But I don't know that that's necessarily changed a whole lot over the years. There's always been cheaper brands, and that's certainly true now as much as it ever used to be. Chinese tyres have come a long way, but they're still low quality compared to tyres manufactured by companies such as Bridgestone, which we consider to be one of the market leaders, if not the market leader, in terms of tyre quality. Of course, Michelin and Goodyear are both excellent brands as well, and we see our fair share of all the different brands, and yes, we absolutely see the difference. And that's relevant to but when it comes to cheap Chinese tyre, well, it's probably not going to last the distance for the second life, which rules out the possibility of retreading. But we would still repair tyres like that.
What do you think, just given your experience, would shift behaviour towards rebuilding and reuse at scale rather than dispose? Is it pricing, availability, quality? What do you think would turn that market around a bit and help to grow, Australian manufactured product?
Got it. All the best.
Do you think that, bye? And we will suspend until 11.
of new tyres, the collection of usable truck tyre casings, and the export of casings to international retreaders.
Fantastic, thank you. Although the committee is not required to give evidence under oath, I should advise you these hearings are a formal proceedings of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. I now invite you to make a short opening statement, please.
Yes, so we've got some key matters that we want to sort of bring up for consideration. One of the points is the circular economy is not limited to a domestic market. The international market also plays a very important role. Though a lot of reusable cases are used in Australia, there's not enough demand there to use all of them. So obviously the point is it's quite important to maintain exporting some of that resource. One of the things that we're actually starting to see is in the marketplace there is premium tyres, there's mid-range tyres, and there's also economy. What we're starting to see is market creep, where we're seeing a lot more budget tyres coming into the market. Though they're competitive price point wise, we're actually finding that they don't achieve too many kilometres. They're not as durable, and they're not exactly, the potential for retreading is actually diminished. So that means we're actually getting a lot of waste generation. Obviously they're burning through the tyres quicker. And if you say how many, we're saying roughly about 15% creep in the lower end of the spectrum. In regards to tyre regrooving, if done according to manufacturer's specifications, it's a safe practice. What we're starting to observe is regrooving of tyres going beyond acceptable limits. So obviously that's becoming a bit of a safety issue. So what we're saying is, yes, it's safe, but it needs to be done in a certain context, in a certain way. So that's one of the things that we're sort of pushing. There's just a couple of other points, just very quickly. One of the challenges with exporting a resource for the circular economy is the time it takes in order to get an export licence. In order to export to different customers, it can take up to 3 months to get a new customer on. So that means that you've found a customer, you've negotiated a deal, but that deal can take 3 months. So you've got to spend a lot of time working with that customer to keep them on the hook, and that can be challenging. One of the biggest challenges that we've had is that when we initially set up our licence to export, we went through a very extensive process of getting those customers on board. When we did the renewal, we had to go through a very intensive process again, even though a lot of those customers have already been vetted, at a cost of in excess of $13,500. So what we want is things to be more practical, where if the government's already screened them, checked them internationally, done all the background checks, there's actually no need to redo it. So what we're asking for is simplification, and that means that the department can use resources for other things. Another challenge that we had was we did get an audit to track where our tyres were going, and when we did the audit, the department had challenges actually analysing their own data. So we had to invest a lot of time in actually providing feedback. This is the data, it's in your system, this is where it is, and we gave them all the dates. So I think there's a bit of an issue. They're pulling data from multiple sources. So what we need to actually have a look at is what's the issue there? How can we fix it? So even though we're sort of bringing up a few problems, we're saying, okay, those problems exist, but if they exist, how can we actually improve and fix those problems? Yeah, a lot of them are fairly straightforward. One of the big things is when we do an export licence, part of that process is getting a third-party verification. often in that process we have to go to different organisations who actually deal with other people that we compete with, which is a real challenge. It would be a better preference to only deal with government. We're already providing the information. The government just needs to verify what's happening. Probably the biggest thing that we need to change is when an export licence gets approved, an assessor goes through and assesses it, and then it has to be signed off by someone senior delegate in government. What we want is that if you're employing an assessor and they're qualified to assess those, they should be able to approve them. I think you would be able to get the applications through about 50% quicker by actually doing that. So really today what we're trying to do is just point out a few different things, and it's saying, hey, let's fix this. It's not overly complicated, but we could certainly make a difference. Yeah, so obviously there's been a lot of talk about a resource levy on the importation of new tyres to possibly help the circular economy. Obviously, if that was the case, you would need to have some way where you can clearly see the benefits and where the money's actually going. At the moment, obviously, with the transport sector, it's a bit of a pressure cooker. So they're doing lots of improvements in terms of the digital technology they're using to monitor their trucks, trying to keep your fuel costs under control. So I think you would definitely need to have a serious look at making sure whatever's introduced is actually sustainable and that it has definitely measurable benefits. I think that's about my 3 minutes. Yeah.
No, you've outlined a lot of it and probably knocked a few of our questions off at the same time.
Yeah.
What are, I guess in layman's terms, what are the operational bottlenecks in export, licensing, compliance, and how does that affect your efficiency to be able to do what you're doing?
Yeah, a lot of it is we're tracking from where we collect and we're tracking right through to where it actually goes. There is actually a lot of time consumed in that. So potentially one way of fixing that would be to have a system where you could put all that data in, so then you can actually track it from A to B all the way through. I think definitely the responsiveness we're having a challenge with. So we can go and find deals, that's not a question. The challenge is the speed at which we can get those deals to happen. So if we could, so say for instance, rather than taking 3 months to get a new customer approved on a licence, if they could do that in 5 business days. So the challenge that we're having is every customer that we deal with, we have to get them approved. So it's like going into a shop, having products, and a customer walks in, and then you have to explain that you can't engage with them straight away. Yeah. So often what we're finding is that with that delay, it actually erodes trust. So it's a bit like you've got to manage the relationship very well.
And what do you think the reasons for the 3 month delay are?
So part of that is, that's a very good question. So part of that is, it doesn't seem to be like in the departments, like people are specifically assigned to deal with that. So they're pulling resources from other departments. So within the departments, they're trying to make use of the resources that they've got, but they definitely need to have people allocated. Within their system, they definitely need to have a way of tracking. So when I put in an application, it should be tracked all the way through. What we're finding is that when we put in an application, we've got to go back and raise it with them again, and again and again and again. So I think possibly for one customer's application, I may have to call them about 50 times. And what it is that you've got to bring it back in front of them again. And then when it'll go through a pipeline and then it'll stop. But sometimes they don't know why. So then you've got to ask questions. okay, why is it stopped? What are you waiting for?
Portal or anything that you go through where you can track it yourself to some extent? No.
Oh, so there is a portal where we upload everything, but there's no way to sort of see the green light. So there is a status, and it'll say in progress, but it doesn't tell you anything other than that. Yeah.
And do they have average processing times?
It's very random.
Okay.
Yeah. So really, what we're looking for is accountability. So if something goes in the system, they should be able to turn that around very quickly. Now, the information that we put in, I would put in less if I went for a contract for $100 million. So the sort of deals that we're talking about, they're only small, very small, but the level of professional presentations, like if you guys actually go back and you look at the submissions that we've done, it would blow your mind. So we haven't just thrown information together, we've taken a lot of care. One of the biggest challenges too is with retreading, a lot of the customers around the world are more advanced than Australia. So Australia's behind the eight ball. Some customers are using robotic equipment, a lot of scanning technology, a lot of equipment that's very, very advanced. When we do the submission, we have to go into detail and explain in the whole process, and that causes friction where you've got a company that's invested a lot of money to make sure that their business is advanced, and then we have to communicate that. So as you can imagine, you've got to build up a lot of trust in order for them to give it to us. Another challenge is when we're talking to customers, obviously the government's asking us to provide information on environmental practices in another country. Often those countries do not have those practices in place. So then when we're engaging with other environmental departments in other countries, it can cause a lot of friction. In regards to different retreaders overseas, the Australian government's asking how many do they sell, how many employees do they engage, where do they sell those tyres. So as you can imagine, when you're selling a product, in order to maintain trust, it is very challenging. So I guess what we're saying is it could be very simple. We understand that the department needs to track everything. That's a given. What we're saying is it could be very simple. Yeah.
So you have said that a levy on new tyre imports should not be used in your submission to stimulate circular economy outcomes. We've heard from a couple of people that they think a recycling levy on cheaper imported tyres would be a good thing, and you've spoken a little bit about budget tyres. They're not achieving the kilometres and they're not as durable, and the potential for retreading is diminished. So what do you think the answer to that is, if not for an import levy per se?
Oh, I think you could not worry about the import levy. If you said that the Australian government is going to set a standard, this is the minimum of what we expect, instantly it'll change. So because we deal directly with a lot of tyre factories, if you talk to them, they can respond very quickly. And by the time a government implements policy, they've already changed. So the speed at which they move is so quick.
So it's due to standards rather than a levy.
Yeah, and they would adjust very quickly. Say for instance, so when we were talking about budget tyres, we were talking about a tyre that might only last 80,000 kilometres. When we're talking about middle of the range, we're talking about something that might last 200,000 kilometres. And if Australia focuses more on the mid-range and the premium, a lot of the tyres will last longer, and they will be able to be retreaded. So that means that you're delaying that going into waste for maybe a few more years. So what we did a while ago is that we did this 12 months ago. we noticed that there was a lot of rubbish starting to come into Australia. So we have evaluated 62 brands around the world. And then we specifically imported tyres of a higher calibre, and that can be retreaded at least twice. So what we're doing is, we're not just talking about it, we're already doing it. So we're trying to change customer behaviour. Yes, you can have a budget option, but if you spend a little bit more, this is the difference. And often when you say, okay, what's the difference between a mid-range and a budget? It could be 10 kgs of rubber. That could be the difference between a budget tyre and a mid-range and a premium. And so what we did is we went to look at importing a certain tyre for a customer recently, and we went through about 15 different tyre brands, and the weights, there was quite remarkably difference in weights. Sometimes when there's a difference in price, there's natural rubber and then there's synthetic rubber. Sometimes the cheaper ones are engineered with a lot more synthetic rubber, and so they're manufactured to a price point. In really good tyres, you need a combination of both. So the natural rubber gives it a bit more spring and give, and then the synthetic rubber, that gives you different things for like ozone protection so the tyre doesn't break down so fast. And there's a whole different other wear characteristics to do with the tyres. So you really need a bit of a balance. We are seeing, though this is a review on the tyre industry, we are seeing massive changes with the transport industry in terms of their level of professionalism. So they're definitely moving up very quickly. So I see what the committee's doing. They're saying, what can we do in the tyre industry? Because then we can actually help to support that transport industry. Yeah.
Do you find when you're talking with transport operators and you're going through the differences in effectively cost per kilometre?
Yeah.
For that, you know, we'll say a casing because
Yeah.
you included 1 or 2 or 3 retread opportunities. Do you find there's a great deal of difference in the cost between that and just changing? And to use a transport analogy, when I worked at Mercedes-Benz, a universal joint for a semi-trailer was $1,000.
Yeah.
But that would do, you know, 1 million kilometres. Whereas for something like a Kenworth, you could buy them for around $60, but you're changing them every 12 months, which means 2 to 4 hours off the road, mechanical time, you know, plus the price of goods. So when you work it out over the life of that product, you buy cheap, you pay twice.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can sort of go through and explain that to them. This is your option. What we've sort of focused on is we're sort of bringing in premium tyres, but what we're doing is selling them for an affordable price. So essentially, though our top competitors are selling them for say $700 or $800, we're able to sell them for around about $350 plus GST. But in saying that, once it's run out, we can then get it retreaded twice. One of the challenges that we've got is that though retreads are good, often it's cheaper within Australia to go and buy a new one. So I think that's the challenge at the moment. Yes, retreading is good, but not so good in Australia. So say, for instance, with the retreading plant here, some of them could be paying up to $50,000 in 3 months full power. So whereas a retreading plant overseas might only pay $2,000. So there's lots of variables. A wage here, minimum wage, might be $25. Overseas, it could be 5 or 6. But the cost of living in another country might be different. Also with retreads, often they have different road conditions where the countries do a lot more retreading, but their travel distance is shorter. So when they do a retread, it lasts for longer. Obviously, retreads, a lot of people mainly use them for round towns or regional, but not so much for interstate. Yeah, hopefully we've...
spoken in your submission about rogue operators. How common are they across the industry, and what are the regulatory gaps that exist there?
Oh, yeah, that is a very good question. So we actually called up the Environmental Department lately. It would have been maybe 3 months ago. And we said, you know, obviously there's a challenge here where these road operators keep on popping up. And they said if they're not already in the system being tracked and they're outside the system, there wasn't much that they could do about it. So what they're saying is that they were monitoring the people that were registered in their system, but they didn't have any form of mechanism to monitor people that weren't actually operating correctly. I can get an email because I remember my wife was talking about it. So she couldn't understand, it just blew her mind. You're monitoring waste tyres if someone isn't actually in the system. That does, yeah, so that was the challenge. So we do see people where they pop up and they might collect a lot of stuff and then they suddenly realise that they can't do anything because they don't have a licence. They can't export anything, and then they sort of disappear. But the real question is, where are those tyres going? And sometimes we...
And where do you think the tyres go?
We're not too sure. Yeah. And sometimes we do have different customers where they say, oh, we can actually get them collected for a lot cheaper. And then we sort of explain, well, there's something wrong with that. I'll give you an example. If there's a business close by to us, we just charge them $6 plus GST. If they get that done by a recycler, it could be anywhere up to 30. So what we've been doing is trying to give customers value. So we're doing it for a reasonable price and doing everything right, but obviously that's been hindered by other people in the market that don't hold licences, don't have proper buildings. I'll give you an example. When we store tyres, we put them in tyre racks. So they're not outside, they're stored in a professional manner. And part of that is if you flat stack tyres, it damages the sidewalls. So we're sort of dealing with people that are storing stuff outside and not sort of acting in the most professional manner. So there's definitely an issue there. But if the government said it doesn't matter whether you're registered with us or not, if you're doing the wrong thing, we're going to find out who you are. And so I think...
So is there new regulation needed, or it's just enforcing the existing?
I think they could just take the current legislation to say anyone that is operating in this space, whether you are actually registered or not registered, or have licences or not licences, these are the ramifications.
Or you need to be registered or we'll shut you down.
Yeah. When we got an audit, it was interesting to hear about the different things that they were looking for, and but obviously we did notice there was definitely a problem with how their data is structured. Because I came from a project management background and I was used to doing a lot of data analysis, it was very quick to go through the data and show them what they wanted. But they were just pleasantly surprised that it was already in their system. So that could be, that's definitely a problem with how the data is structured in their system. But I think after that audit, they would definitely had the wheels turning in order to look at better ways of doing things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Appreciate that. It was very informative. So thank you for your attendance today. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, please forward it to the Secretariat by 10 July 2026. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence and have the opportunity to request corrections to transcription errors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's practical. Cheers. Set. Okay. I now welcome representative from Tyre Australia to give evidence of public hearing today. For the Hansard record, could you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear?
Thank you, and good morning for the opportunity to. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Mauricio Marino. I'm a civil engineer, and I have been working with tires for about 23 years. I have been working with manufacturers, mining companies, and tire service companies as well. And I have been working with Tyre for around 14 years. The last 2 years and a half, I have been working here in Australia. I have the responsibility to lead the technical department for Tyre, which is, for a little background, Tyre is Tyre Mining Tire Group is a mining tire service company with presence in around 22 countries. We have the responsibility with tires in about 150 mine sites, underground and surface. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, should advise that these hearings are a formal proceeding of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. Would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, thank you. Yes, to talk a little bit about how we do the things and which are our concerns. I would like to clarify that our approach with our customers is brand agnostic, data-driven, and site-specific. We work around to understand the conditions and the requirements, environmental, safety requirements, expectations of the customer, to deliver as much value as possible. Today, what we want to have the opportunity to talk is about the waste hierarchy. When we talk about the waste hierarchy, as known, we have a source reduction on the top, reuse, recover, recycle, waste to energy, and disposal. We reckon that the key principle should be to focus in the top of this waste hierarchy. That's the message that we want to deliver today. And also is a part of an invitation. The tires management that we provide and we try hard to provide to our customer is not only thinking or trying to obtain results regarding operating costs or productivity, which is absolutely very important. It's also about to find a ways to minimize the number of tires that we consume within operation. That say, a strong focus in the top of the waste hierarchy, source reduction, and we have implemented not only the traditional tire management, we have also implemented special technology focused on tires. We have tire side, whole sides, which are proactive technologies that chase to extend the tire life for our customers, and of course, reduction of waste. Then we want to mention about the reuse. We have extensive programs for repair large OTR tires. And also we have certified tire shops that we have the capability to deliver to the customer certification for the reduce of CO2 when they repair tires. So that's the second section of the hierarchy. And we want to mention about that. As we say, and we have noticed, as we say before, it's not only about the cost opportunity that we have to repair, it's about reduce the number of tires. We have seen in sites where we had the repair program a reduction above 10-50% of the number of tires using this service, the repair. We also want to mention some experience that we have, good experience that we have talking about recovering materials. We have a plant in Chile which is based on thermal conversion technology. We want to make the differentiation with the recycling, which is good, but when we talk about thermal conversion, we are talking about the recovery of raw materials and put it back in the circle of the productivity and the production manufacturers for carbon black steel. We also produce oil from that, and also we produce gas that fuels the plant itself. So I reckon this is a good opportunity to discuss in this committee. Thank you.
One thing I was reading just in section 2 of your submission about the tyre industry, about standardising regulations across the entire country, so you're not doing state by state basis.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us examples of where things are different that you think, well, that doesn't make sense, this should all be?
Yes, sir. We can talk about what we have observed in other countries. Basically, North America, Canada, United States, Chile, and experience from Colombia. We have noticed like it's a shared responsibility that we have here. We have the responsibility of the government, its regulations. We have the responsibility of the tire solution providers, as us, as Caltire. We have the manufacturers, and we have the mining. But we have noticed like in these countries where they have developed and implemented a proper regulations, we can move faster regarding the solutions that we can provide. Specifically in Chile, where we had the plan around 7 years, the interest of the customer changed. Before that, there were longer discussions about the thermal conversion, and as soon as the regulation come alive, everything accelerates. Even the investment from our side, we, as a solution provider, we can understand the sustainability of the solution. So there has been a significant investment pulled by those regulations, and still working and still working to deliver a better value for it. Colombia, for example, as well, the regulation change triggered the interests of the mining companies, because it's different. In Colombia, for example, the final user is the responsible for the large OTR tires, and in Chile is the importer or manufacturer, depends on. So that's an example how this can impose this in Australia. And you know better than me, Australia is an example and on a guide regarding the standards and how the thing should be done. So it's good.
I was just interested in your submission discusses traditional owner rights and social licences. How does CalTyre work with traditional owners in relation to tyre management?
Sorry again?
With the traditional owners, the submission talks on page 52.
Traditional owners. Okay. Well, here in CalTyre, when we talking about Australia, when we have presence in operations, we look locally if there are service provider or something that we can add to the operation. To have that relation and that responsibility that we are talking with. Sometimes it's hard to attract and motivate, but we as a company, we have a training program. We also have the capability to do certifications regarding tire mechanics service. So we have a program that it lasts around 1 year and a half, and is very open to everyone that's keen to participate and develop that skills. The other thing that we mentioned is regarding the future rehabilitation of the land. That's what we mentioned there. We mentioned like it's a responsibility because currently there are large stockpiles in different operations. That's part of this approach that we want to highlight here. The opportunity we have to do something with all the stockpiles of tires.
Thank you for that answer. We talk about thermal conversion.
Yes, sir.
As a solution for particularly mining tyres. Can you outline how thermal conversion works? There's an uptake of that in Chile, from what I understand. And what do you think we could learn from Chile's experience to be able to bring here? And, what do we need for the existing infrastructure to support thermal conversion?
Okay.
It's a big lot of
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Thank you. The interesting about the tire industry and mining is that we can measure that we have regarding waste, and we can project what we have regarding waste. That's important foundation to develop technologies or solutions around the waste hierarchy. Regarding that was the foundation and the government regulation to deploy that plant in Chile. I had to say is something real. I've been with CalTyre for 14 years, and I remember the previous conversations all around looking for this solution. For large tires was almost impossible to find another place where a real solution was in place. So let's say CalTyre take the opportunity to develop this. All the plan is developed specifically for CalTyre. How it works, the plan is located in a mining region, north of Chile, near to Antofagasta, in La Negra. The plant has a capability to process on a daily basis 20 tons of tires, used tires, which is equivalent to 5 tires, 57, 63 inches. That say, in a year basis, the plant has a capability to process 7,500 tons of tires. Once the tires are processed, how it works, it works based on thermal conversion. Of course, there will be some initial stage where the tires need to be cut in small pieces to be processed in the reactors. As I say, capability of 20 tons per day. There are 2 reactors that work in parallel because there is a cooling down requirement. So both are working. the process started heating up the pieces of tires inside the reactors, but as far about 4 or 5 hours, the plant has the capability to be autosufficient with the gas that it generates. So it's very friendly. There is no oxygen involved in the process, which is a big advantage. When the process finishes, is producing oil in a daily basis, about 6,500 liters. It's producing steel about 4,000 kilograms, and carbon black about 8,000 kilograms. And of course, the gas that used to fuel itself. Basically, that's the process. I had to say that it's a constant development of what to do with these byproducts that are obtained from the process. There are current developments with universities and other industries to have a better use of the byproducts that we obtain and to have a better quality. Specifically for the carbon black, last 2 years was added an additional module to the plant to improve the quality of the carbon black so it can reach another industries and of course have a better value, deliver a better value. Basically, as an overview, this is how it works.
Thank you. In your submission, you talk about how a mandatory scheme would create jobs and reduce emissions. What should a mandatory scheme look like, and are there any aspects of the current tyre stewardship program that are working well?
I mean, I can talk about the experience that I see in other countries. This is what you, okay. Yes, definitely there is a motivation specifically talking about Chile, because the regulation is escalated year to year. They have a different or a higher percentage of the tires that need to be processed. Could be thermal conversion or another solution. And also there is a point on time where the importation of new tires depends of the process, recycling or recovery process that they have been submitted. That kind of mandatory things is what we saw in other countries. But I reckon the opportunity that we have here is, as I say, the stakeholders to work together. We reckon it's not only about regulation, it's about incentivize early adoption and looking after, as I say before, to minimize the number of tires that we use in the top of the waste hierarchy, and then how we process it when we have to avoid disposal, let's say.
Fantastic, thank you. There's one more I had. When we're talking about thermal conversion, is that similar to pyrolysis?
It is pyrolysis.
Yeah. Yeah. No, all good. Nothing else. Perfect. Okay, thank you very much for your attendance today. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, please forward to the Secretariat by 10 July 2026. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence and have the opportunity to request any corrections to transcription errors. So the committee will now suspend and for 45. Yep. 12:45. We'll come back. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. We really appreciate that. And I also want to say that in Caltire we also have, as I said before, I'm here in charge of the technical, but in Caltire we have people that is full-time looking after the development of these kind of technologies.
Yeah.
So if in the future is required any support from culture, we are keen to support this.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot.
We'll reopen the committee at 12:46 p.m. I now welcome representative from A1 Rubber to give evidence in the public hearing today. For the Hansard record, would you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear?
My name's Timothy Eckert. I'm the CEO of A1 Rubber.
Thank you. Although the committee does not require to give evidence under oath, I should advise you that these hearings are a formal proceeding of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. I'd now invite you to make an opening statement, if you like.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, and thanks for the opportunity to appear today. My name's Tim Eckert and I represent A1 Rubber, an Australian manufacturer based in Queensland for over 30 years. Our business uses approximately 9,000 tonnes of recovered rubber each year, including tyre-derived crumb rubber, to manufacture products such as safety surfacing, sports and fitness flooring, playground surfaces, underlays and other recycled rubber products. We manufacture a high volume of products that are sold to consumers through retailers like Bunnings and Clark Rubber, along with direct to contractors, builders and landscapers. The main point I'd like to raise today is that Australia should look at end-of-life tyres not only as a waste problem, they should look at them and be seen as a raw material with amazing mechanical properties and overall domestic manufacturing resource. Despite the volume of end-of-life tyres generated in Australia, recycled crumb rubber is an expensive raw material to use. The cost reflects collection, transport, processing, quality assurance, compliance and significant capital investment by the tyre recyclers. The consistent availability of economic fit-for-purpose crumb rubber is key to high-quality manufactured products. This is an important point for manufacturers like A1 Rubber, who are attempting to turn a natural waste stream into useful, long-life Australian-made products. But in doing that in a market where the vast majority of our competitive finished products are imported. Australian manufacturers carry the high costs of Australian labour, energy, quality assurance and locally sourced raw materials. These costs produce public benefits, but current procurement settings don't always recognise them. From a manufacturer's point of view, Australia not only needs a strong collection and recycling industry for end-of-life tyres, it needs stronger domestic end markets for the materials recovered from them. So recycling only becomes truly circular when the recovered material is used in products that are specified, purchased and trusted in the market. This is where policy settings can result in a practical difference, particularly around specification and procurement. The most immediate lever available to government is procurement. Where Australian-made recycled rubber products meet performance, safety and value for money requirements, government-funded projects should encourage to specify them. Public infrastructure, playgrounds, schools, sporting facilities, community facilities and other public works are all areas where recycled rubber products can be used. Any strengthened tyre stewardship arrangement could also benefit Australian manufacturers. A regulated scheme could help to support high-value end users, including manufacturers that use Australian processed crumb rubber in durable Australian-made products. My recommendation to the committee is Australia's tyre policy should include end market demand, local manufacturing and product stewardship together. If we get the balance right, end-of-life tyres can support Australian jobs, Australian manufacturing and a stronger circular economy. Thank you. I welcome the committee's questions.
Cool, thank you. Do you want to fire off or I've got a couple?
Sure. So what sort of products do you manufacture and what's the size of your workforce? Can you give us a little bit of an idea of what you do and how many jobs you support?
Sure, we have about 65 employees of 3 offices. We have a manufacturing site here in Yatala, just between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and then we have sales offices and warehouses in New South Wales and Victoria as well. And we make everything from kind of products for the consumer that we'd sell through Bunnings, like home gym tiles, kind of soft fall kind of rubber matting that we make in playgrounds, and then kind of high-end commercial gym flooring that most of the gym flooring chains around Australia would have our products in their flooring. So we make somewhere between 400 and 500,000 gym tiles that we sell to Bunnings every year, and then we also sell our commercial products.
It's a great Australian story.
It is. We're very proud of it. Yeah.
On your website, it suggests that tyre rubber is unrecyclable. Can you explain your position behind that?
So I guess we don't call it recycling, the bit that we do, we call it upcycling because we don't change the properties of the rubber. So our manufacturing process is kind of similar to baking a cake. So we take the raw rubber materials, we kind of glue them back together again into solid shapes, and then we peel them, or we slice them into either long flooring strips like that we will put in a roll, or like a metre by metre gym tile. So yeah, we consider ourselves upcyclers. I guess a little bit to differentiate ourselves from the tyre recycling industry, which we don't do any tyre recycling. So we are a customer of tyre recycling businesses, and we buy their crumb.
Mm-hmm. And you can, if that mat wears out or breaks down, you can then take the product back, reuse it.
We can, yeah. So we have existing equipment. So we reprocess our own manufacturing waste, which we call regrind, and we can also, and then we put that into particularly underlays, because it's typically has lots of different colours in it, so it's perfect for kind of being out of sight. But we also use that with kind of product that's reached the end of its life. We can take it back, recycle it.
We have heard in the past about using rubber in playgrounds, software as leaching into the environment. Is that something that you've come across, or do you see that happening, or are we talking something that's just very minute? Or
I've come across the reports, so certainly I'm not a chemist, so I can't kind of comment on it, I guess, but I've certainly read the reports that have come in, I think, from Europe, and I think the Tide Stewardship Australia have done a number of reports kind of looking about the safe use of rubber crumb, one of which is been released and is public, and another one which I've seen that hasn't been released yet, but I think they were going to release at some stage. And so I think it comes down a lot to, not every installation is the same, and you can use different chemicals to bind and encapsulate the rubber, and different quality rubber and paints and oxides. And so I think a lot of that comes down, in my opinion, to kind of the quality of the products and the quality of the installation. Not all kind of rubber softball surfaces are the same, I would put forward.
Fantastic. How do your sort of contractors and customers, how do they evaluate their performance versus cost when you're looking at tire-derived materials?
Yeah, it probably depends on the industry that we're selling into. So obviously, I'm sure you can imagine in the retail market, price is kind of king, and we have some pretty clever IP around the formulation of our products and the equipment that we have manufactured that manufactures our products. That gives us kind of enough of a competitive advantage that we can manufacture in Australia and still compete with imported products. And the fact that we have 7 SKUs in Bunnings and a number of products in Clark Rubber that are sold in every store Australia-wide, I think kind of speaks to that. And then some of our more business-to-business sales, where we're selling, whether it be a kid's playground softball or into a commercial gym, I think the fact that we utilise end-of-life car and truck tyres from Australia is a selling point. It does speak to we're the largest manufacturer of our type in Australia, and most of our competition is imported. So it's nice to fly the Australian flag and show that we're using Australian tyres and not kind of tyres sourced from overseas.
No, we did hear from some people the other day saying how good your business is, which is a good sign.
And so we've been talking a little bit about regulation and what we can do, and different views on levies and standards and all of that. Have you got anything to contribute around? Some people say we shouldn't have more regulation, others say we should. What's your view around that?
I guess I'm probably not positioned to kind of comment on the tyre recycling side, but I do know in some territories overseas where there is a more formal tyre stewardship arrangement, that there are often incentives available as part of that scheme for manufacturers who then use, who create their end market and use the products and help kind of use that domestic manufacturing. And so I think that from a business like A1 Rubber, that would obviously be beneficial to us if there was incentives available to support our use of kind of Australian-derived end-of-life, rubber crumb. So that part of the kind of a formal stewardship scheme would be, and regulation would be, welcomed by us. But yeah, I wouldn't be able to comment on the tyre collection and the recycling side.
You're listed as a circular economy collaborator with Tyre Stewardship Australia. What sort of work does that involve?
So I guess we support each other. So we're a bit of a good example of what the Tide Stewardship Australia are trying to create with their market development fund. You know, they're trying to create businesses like A1, I guess, with new technologies and bits and pieces to increase the use of crumb that's sourced in Australia. And so we provide a good example of what can be done, you know, and the fact that we can be a competitive Australian-based business and make these products. And then, you know, the TSA support us with, you know, those reports that I mentioned before about, you know, help bring forward into the market just the benefits of making products out of rubber. You know, car and truck tyre rubber is an excellent raw material. It has, you know, it's really resilient, hard wearing, has great kind of shock, you know, impact absorption, can be used in a lot of great products. So it's always a shame to see it kind of sent off and burnt or buried or any of the other ways that they dispose of it.
What do you think, or where do you reckon the strongest commercial end markets currently for tyre-derived materials, and what would limit their expansion? Do we have an issue with a lot of product coming from overseas, or, you know, the cheaper value, lesser quality?
Yeah, I think flooring is a kind of commercial flooring is a really kind of good target area. It's something we've sold into the gym industry a lot of, but there's lots of other commercial flooring kind of opportunities where, you know, our style of rubber flooring could work. You know, whether it be a train station, a ferry terminal, you know, a hospital, certain areas of the hospital. There's plenty of areas where you could put down our form of underlay and our top surface. There certainly is a price factor, whether we're kind of compared to non-recycled product like a vinyl, you know, which is much cheaper than our product, or a product which is similar to ours but manufactured overseas, you know, with a different cost base. They could also be cheaper. So, yeah, we have to compete on the product characteristics and the quality and making sure it's fit for purpose as well as for the price.
I was going to ask, with the different flooring, is there different sort of compound structures and that you make for them, or is it a very similar product? And what about the stability of getting the crumb rubber supply? Is that?
Yeah, we have quite a range of products, everything from an underlay, like an acoustic underlay to stop noise transfer in high-rise buildings, a thicker acoustic underlay for use in gyms. You know, there's a bit of a trend of gyms having smaller footprints and being included in whether, you know, business blocks or other residential, and there's, you know, noise transfer issues there. So we have a product that goes there. We have a top hard-wearing layer, and then, you know, our more consumer-focused kind of home gym tile style products. Crumb is available. It's not kind of as readily available at the quality that we need as we would like it to be. You know, there's one of the kind of ironic things about what we make is that we use a waste material, but we require a very clean, kind of consistent material. And so a tyre recycler needs to do a lot of processing to generate the type of crumb that we need to use, which is a more kind of labour-intensive process for them, I guess. There's certainly plenty of tyres around, but it's, I guess, about finding the recyclers who can produce for the type of crumb and the quality that we need, and then at a, you know, economic price where we can, you know, make money by manufacturing something and selling it.
Is there a stable market for you to get the products that you need at the standard that you need them?
There is. We've developed some relationships with some suppliers, you know, that keep us going. Yeah.
What do you think governments can do to assist to try and grow your industry as a whole?
I think it's all about the developing the end market for our products. So, you know, I think anything around specification and procurement for government-funded projects would be excellent to help kind of, you know, I'm not sure you can dictate that it's bought from Australia, but certainly kind of just to make sure that our style of products could be specified, that we can
put a value not on just what is the cheapest to what is the best.
Yeah.
For the Australian economy, i.e., you know, if there's not much difference in the pricing, paying that extra, what does that get in return? Does, you know, keeps your 65 employees to become 165 or?
That's right. So I think it supports manufacturing. It also helps solve the problem of what to do with end-of-life tyres. So we like to see of ourselves as we're kind of solving two problems. You know, we're keeping Australian people employed, and we're a great Australian business, but we're also helping to solve the issue of what to do with all those tyres, and, you know, what to do with them in a proactive, you know, positive way, you know, turn them into a great product.
Do you find you have different regulation requirements in different states, or is that sort of fairly standard about what can be used and where it can be used in, particularly like in a public asset, whether it's a park or a school or...
Yeah, we don't find our type of products aren't really under many regulations. It's more about the specifications, particularly kind of a local council will specify kind of this type of product they want in their kids' playgrounds, or a gym chain owner will specify what style of flooring they want in their floors. So a lot of our work is more about kind of dealing with architects and councils and things and getting specified. Really the only type of, it's not a regulation, but it's an Australian standard, is around noise transfer for our acoustic products. So when you install an acoustic product in a building, you have to be able to guarantee that you're going to have a certain level of noise reduction, and that's tested typically once the top flooring is put on. So.
And with regard to where you see the future, what sort of new products do you see there being in the future for manufacturing here out of crumb rubber?
There are a heap of things you can do with crumb rubber, particularly with new technology in place. So we're always evaluating new styles of manufacturing technology, different to how we do now, that would use more crumb rubber, and also open up the range of products that we can produce, whether they be consumer products or business to business. And so we're hopefully getting to the point soon where we can announce some of the things we've been working on, but we can't do that right now. But yeah, we are actively working on different ways of doing it. I'm sorry, I can't. I would love to, trust me, but no, I can't right now.
No, that's a fair question.
But there's a bright future.
Absolutely. It is a great product. There's lots of things that can be done with it. So we've got, we've got some very supportive owners, and we've got some real plans on what we'd like to do in the future.
Do you see a marketing value in being an Australian-based company, Australian-owned company? Can you sort of, use that as leverage?
So we do. So we're very proud of being Australian-owned and Australian-based company. So we're proud of what we do, and we have an Australian flag flying above our site. And so we use it on every chance we get. So every pallet we ship has an Australian flag stuck on it, a little sticker. And a lot of our customers do appreciate that, even to the level of Bunnings. The scale of that style of business would appreciate the fact that we're an Australian manufacturer and that we use Australian tyres. So, we would love to export more and help to grow that business. Our style of product is difficult to export because it's kind of heavy and freight costs are a lot, but there's still a nice market here in Australia we'd like to sell more of.
And a lot of that, you talk about the acoustic stuff, I believe a lot comes from Sri Lanka, is that right? Or
comes from all over the place. Yeah, the Middle East, Europe, America, a lot of product comes out of Asia. So yeah, there's a lot. It's a very competitive industry.
Would we have the capacity to replace that importation stuff here? Or?
Absolutely. Well, certainly we would like to think so. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we are ready with the investment to, we've currently bought just a couple of new machines to add to our current fleet, and certainly have the technology and the capability of making more. Yeah. And the raw materials are available. Yeah.
Oh. That's done. You might have knocked that off very quickly, Tim.
Okay, no worries. Okay,
Thank you for that. Thank you for your attendance today. If you have been asked to provide any additional information, please forward to Secretariat by 10 July 2026. You will be sent a copy of the transcript for your evidence and have the opportunity to request corrections to transcription errors. So thank you again, really appreciate it.
No, thanks very much.
Good on you, cheers.
Bye-bye.
Yep, we'll suspend for 5 to 10 minutes. Convene at 1:10 p.m. I now welcome representatives from the Local Government Association of Queensland to give evidence in this public hearing today. For the Hansard record, would you each please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear?
Thank you. Sarah Vogler, Head of Advocacy at the LGAQ.
Hello, Crystal Baker, Manager of Strategic Policy at the Local Government Association of Queensland.
Mr. Mayor?
Good afternoon. Sean Zorro Radnich, Mayor of the Merway Shire.
Terrific, thank you. Although the committee is not required to give evidence under oath, I should advise you that these hearings are a formal proceeding of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. I now invite you all to make a short opening statement, please.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee today. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respect to our elders past, present and emerging. As you just heard, I am the Head of Advocacy at the Local Government Association, and joining me is my Head of Strategic Policy, Crystal Baker, and online we have Mayor Zorro in beautiful Charleville, the Merway Shire. The LGAQ is the peak body for local government in Queensland. We're a not-for-profit association representing all 77 councils across the state. We very much welcome this inquiry as we see it as a critical step in not only raising awareness of the problems councils face with tyres, but also in exploring potential solutions. This is because Queensland councils, particularly in rural, regional and remote areas like Merway, are at the coalface when it comes to managing problem waste streams like end-of-life tyres, both those that are legally disposed of as well as those that are illegally dumped. The current regulatory system in Queensland defaults responsibility for managing tyres at end of life to local government, but this doesn't come with adequate cost recovery mechanisms to support us in dealing with this burden. Gate fees are charged by some councils, but it really only partially covers the cost of recovering tyres, as the true cost of handling, storage, transportation is very significant, as I know you've heard. Councils are also faced with challenging logistics in transporting end-of-life tyre materials due to the lack of sustainable processing solutions and also viable end markets, and that means they really have limited options other than to stockpile or to landfill. And end-of-life tyres also present health and environmental risk, particularly when they are being stockpiled for quite a long time, as they often are, because it's so expensive to move them. And so what councils are seeking is really a strong commitment from both the federal and state governments around mandatory product stewardship, reinvestment of stewardship proceeds into tyre processing infrastructure, recovery and market development, the expansion of end markets for tyre-derived materials, and support to reduce the cost of transporting materials to market. Thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to speak. And I might throw now to Mayor Zorro, who has some words to say as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you also for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. Just a quick, brief outline of the Merway Shire. We are in southwest Queensland, the best part of Queensland, and Australia, if I might say so. But our shire covers 42,000 square kilometres. Our population is around 4,400 residents, which does cause an awful challenge in the fact that by the time we manage all our essential services we do with roads, rates and rubbish, our rate base is at about $8.5 million per year, rateable income, and then and our budget's around 50. So it just puts the complexity of what local governments deal with, especially in the outback and regional and remote. I might even add that in. But this is a great interest of ours in the Merway Shire. In 2021, we put a motion up to the LGA2 conference. It was about we were experiencing challenges with tyres in not just Merway, but right across Western Queensland. Now, the reason for the motion was that we put forward that we would like to see the government charge the tyre companies an excess or a charge to bring the tyres into Australia, because what we experienced is how do we deal with those tyres once end of life becomes. Now, the Merway Shire, we're outside of the waste levy that is imposed on by the state government. So that means we don't actually charge to go to our waste facility. Now, I know that sounds a bit weird, but we do charge. It costs us about $750,000 per year to run that waste facility by a contractor. And one of the key components we have challenges with, especially with DETSI, is not just tyres, but also green waste. It is a big challenge about how we deal with that. But today we're talking about tyres. So the reason we put that motion in 2021, Southwest Red, as it was called, and it has been up. We have moved forward in the 6 shires, as we call ourselves Southwest Rock. Now, they're the shires of Maranoa, Balonne, St George, Paru, Cunnamulla, Blue, Targaninda and Quilpie and Merway. Now, back in 2018, I believe, we received some waste recovery funding from the state government. Now, that funding was quite considerable across the 6 shires, so we banded the 2 shires together. Now, Merway and Quilpie joined together to alleviate some of the problem we had with tyres. Now, just to put in perspective, at the moment, right here in Merway, we still have 300 tonnes of tyres. And as I said, we do not charge the tyre companies. We have 2 tyre companies in Charleville to dispose of that waste. The reason we do not charge is because if we did, what we would experience would be the illegal dumping. Now, the challenge with that is we do have people in our shire that say that we should be charging to dump those tyres. If we find illegal dumping, council would have to pick that up and they would still end up in our landfill anyway. So that's why we sort of go against it. But when we received that funding back in 2018 across the 6 shires, just to put in perspective, that Merway joined with Quilpie shires. Now, we had over $350,000 designated to those 2 shires, as did the other 4. Now, we shredded over almost 600 tonnes. 494 tonnes were shredded out of the Charleville waste facility, and 140 tonne was shredded out at Quilpie. Now, the biggest challenge with that for shredding came to the shredding of the tyres came to, I believe it was about 140,000, which was, I just haven't got that correct figure. I'm looking for it on my computer. $140,000 to shred the tyres, but it was over 260 to transport those tyres. Now, those tyres were transported to Wollongong. That is where the contractor was, where the shredded rubber gets melted down. Rubber gets extracted to one part and the wire gets extracted to another, and it is put back into whether it is bitumen or it's put back into tyres. Now, as you can see, guys, this is the biggest challenge that we find. So how does council generate that sort of income to keep shredding our tyres? Now, we've just received, this week, as would you believe, from DETSI, we received a grant of $800,000 to start constructing our waste transfer facility. Now, that is so when people come to use that waste facility, the different kinds of fill that we have, whether it's concrete, tyres, timber, they will be distributed within the confines of where we have our waste facility. Now, by doing that alone, what we have done and what we've experienced in Merway is that we put on 40 years of lifespan onto that waste facility just by doing that. So our biggest challenge at the moment, as I said, we have 300 tonnes of tyres sitting there ready to be shredded, but we just don't have the income to be able to move forward. Pretty well in a nutshell, but if there's anything else that you would like to add, Sarah, please do so, but pretty well in a nutshell, that's where we're at. So it's about 1/3 the shred and it's 2/3 to cart the material away.
Thank you.
Oh, no, being from LGAQ, yeah, the opening statement that Sarah delivered. Thank you.
Thank you. Where do we start?
I was just going to ask Mayor Zorro if there's any way, like, to use reverse logistics when tyres are being dropped up to the region, organising to backfill the vehicles that are going I assume you get them from Brisbane, maybe. Is there any way to employ reverse logistics to make it cheaper or more affordable?
At this point in time, we've just completed a freight study for Maranoa and Merway, and that was to get freight back on rail. Now, once again, we had to get an outside consultant, a government agency, to do that freight study. It was about 480,000, and this was about, it was state government money. It's about making more, obviously, to move to that greener space, especially around transport. At this point in time, unfortunately, they did not put in that we would backload that material. So once again, we are looking at different options. At this point in time, we do not have a specific freight line that we could back freight that back into, whether it's Brisbane into the major ports or down south into, like I said, I think the major site is actually in Wollongong, Illawarra. So we have looked at different, we have looked at different options, but unfortunately at this point in time, we do not have that facility.
You just wanted to get the Wollongong.
Oh, I do love Wollongong.
Do you have any issues, particularly out in your rural areas, about where people come from other local government areas to dump in facilities that aren't charging for that, for those sort of things, and get an idea of the cost on, what it costs to recycle or transport a tyre from your different areas?
So I can say that in Maranoa, I spoke to one of their officers this morning. They charge, they're inside the waste levy, so they have to charge more or less about what the state actually puts forward they need to. They're having all sorts of problems with illegal dumping. Once again, it's one of those challenges where these people probably don't realise how lucky they are. So once you sort of put that in position on, and usually there's a lot of mechanisms in this as well. You guys would already know this, but usually when you buy a brand new tyre off a tyre retailer, they usually charge you a fee to dispose of that. Now, as I say, here in Merway, we do not charge that fee to use our waste facility, but in Maranoa they do, and they still, even though those tyres are dumped, they still have all sorts of problems. The biggest challenge is, guys, is we've got to find that funding of shredding and then transporting. And unfortunately, I do have a solution for us at the end of this, but that we've been working with state development on. But even Maranoa, actually, in our Southwest Rock, we even looked at whether one of our shires actually got a tyre shredder, so we can actually shred the tyres. We've looked at different options of industry, whether I believe that the putting rubber into the bitumen at the moment has really progressed forward in the last couple of years, so there's another option. I even had a company that actually made matting for cattle yards and things like that come out and have a look, and we would, for us, if we were to get something like that, we would actually give them the tyres to manufacture their product. But unfortunately, at this stage, at this point in time, nothing has come to fruition as of yet. So, to your question, even those, unless you're in a metropolitan area, even if you were to charge, you're still having trouble with illegal dumping. And what do you do with them? All you can do is really stockpile until you can find some funding to actually get them shredded and make it easy to cart away.
Do you, in your area, I'm from Victoria, so I don't know the similarities in the way the councils operate here, but does council do its own road maintenance and its own road constructions? And do you mandate rubber into the bitumen into those roads like Victoria does with a 5%?
We do work very closely with main roads. We are actually having we're actually getting some asphalt down in our town streets as we speak. But at this point in time, it is getting integrated. I'm not quite sure. I'm probably outside my lane by saying I don't know how advanced we are, but I know it is getting more advanced, and they are doing a lot more of it. But the biggest issue we have is obviously it needs to be shredded first. So we're very open for it to be to use that product with rubber if it was, because once again we'd be more than happy to give those companies the tyres, because it makes us a hell of a lot easier for us. But at this point in time, I don't think we have the technology or the companies in our Southwest Rock that we could advance that on. But I will take that on notice, and I can find out through main roads and give you more information after.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I can probably add a little bit more to that with a lot of the, to add on to the Mayor's comments there. Certainly through our consultation in preparing the submission, we did hear from a lot of local governments around that. Two things. One, they are experiencing that maybe the waste is generated in a waste levy zone being taken across council boundaries into another one for disposal, not necessarily by residents, etc. We do hear figures like often that will cost a council, $30 per tyre to activate and dispose of, and we also know through product stewardship schemes like the voluntary Tyre Stewardship Australia scheme, if a customer was actually to return that back to the producer, that might be much less and maybe half of that. So there's certainly the cost impact. In terms of the interest in using crumb rubber in roads, it's certainly very high. However, when we do look at those TSA figures as well, when we've only got 26% of the tyre stock being reused or recycled, the viability of the end market is challenging, and particularly when we've got that 40% going offshore to fuel and energy markets as well. So for councils, there's probably, in a bit of a nutshell, like three key challenges that they're facing, which Sarah did touch on and the Mayor as well. And just to kind of bring that all together, it's around having that primary responsibility. So local governments do have that responsibility for the illegally dumped tyres, but also the legally dumped ones as well. There's also those market gaps and infrastructure gaps, so it does require a mobile shredder to be in location, in region, in order for that to actually turn into stock that can actually go into the road base. And then also our biggest ask that you probably did see in our submission that Sarah mentioned in our opening statement as well is around a product stewardship scheme. And what we really mean by that is a genuine product stewardship scheme that doesn't just look at the producer, it looks at the whole life cycle of a tyre and all of those markets in between. So, and just to touch on your question about costs, some of those figures that we do have, and I know in terms of Rapid, Far North Queensland and NQ, some of that was mentioned as well. Figures like transporting costs of $400 per tonne, companies shipping down from Western Queensland to the central southeast corner for processing around $400,000 a year. And then in terms of illegal dumping as well, we did outline an example in our submission that talks about how councils, if they can't identify the person responsible for illegal dumping, they can't recover the costs, and that can actually be sometimes $900 a tonne in some regions for actually disposing it and then mobilising the transport of that to another market. So hopefully that gives you some.
I'll just add also, apologies, just with that crumb rubber, I believe it's about 15% it's more expensive with bitumen with crumb rubber in to produce. So for us, we only have X amount of road budget. We've got to eat the maximum amounts we possibly can with that budget. So if we were to go and add another 15%, we would actually get 15% less. I hope that makes sense, but it is a bit more expensive. I just sent an email to my engineers, so thank you.
Is it cheaper for them to do the tyres on site? Because we sort of get prices, it's $5 a tyre gate price at recyclers, which is,
So can I just say, I just found the email. So when we did that grant funding, $38,000 to shred all those tyres, 600 tonne, and it was $330 to cart away. So once again, $5 per tyre seriously does not even, that wouldn't even cost, cover picking it up. So $5 a tyre, which I believe is what we pay when you buy a new tyre, doesn't even cover, it wouldn't even be a scratch off the top to deal with. Once again, it's one of those things, though, isn't it? It's about how do we manage this and still make it viable? Because the more we charge, they're just going to still dump them anyway.
Yeah, well, that's the problem you have where you've got tyranny of distance to the nearest, sizable place that can actually take a large quantity and deliver something with it, and that's a challenge right across rural Australia in particular. Do you have much of OTR ones as well, like mining or agriculture?
Yeah. I can answer that in a broad sense. And I think, we've drawn a lot from the TSA work in that space as well. And so there certainly is, in terms of the recovery rates, we do have a lot of resource regions in Queensland. We have a lot of mining communities, and we do know from those TSA figures that something like only 13% of those tyres are actually being recovered, with the remaining 87% not recovered, either being buried on site, etc. So there's a real opportunity in that, perhaps as well in terms of feedstock to be able to be used.
In your submission, you advocate for a mandatory stewardship scheme. Mm-hmm. What do you believe, or how do you believe it should look like, and how would the principles of EPR support a mandatory scheme?
So in terms of, this is something that's a really live issue, and it has come up for us in other inquiries, the differentiation between EPR, extended producer responsibility, and product stewardship. So EPR is obviously extremely important, and we have resolutions on our books around that, equally around product stewardship. The key difference for us is that the product stewardship schemes, and if it were to be mandated, would really extend those obligations beyond just producers to all of those people and stakeholders in the supply chain. And that's really fundamental to the circular economy principles that I think this inquiry is really coming from and looking into. And for example, when we look at some of the voluntary scheme has been in operation for over a decade, certainly has been making some progress and increasing recovery rates. But some of the figures that we've kind of captured, the scheme's currently reporting recovery rates of 87% for passenger car bus tyres, 20% for off-road tyres. But in comparison, where there are regulated schemes in other countries around the world, there are some countries reporting rates of 97% and 78% as well. So when things are mandatory, the ability to affect change, and for us, for a mandatory scheme to operate, we think it really needs to clearly define the producer obligations, have real clear enforcement mechanisms, look at the design aspects as well of tyres, and that broader regulatory kind of framework. And all states and territories do have something slightly different in that regard.
Can I just check, you said 600 tonnes before, and what the cost for the processing for that was?
Sorry, so there was six, sorry.
Did you say 600 tonnes, and also what was the cost that you said to?
So it was 494 tonnes out of Merway, 140 out of Quilpie, so let's say 650 tonnes out of two shires with a population base of probably about 5,500 people. Now it cost $38,000 to shred those tyres on site, and it was $330 to have them transported to Illawarra. So once again, it was huge cost. $38,000 to do 600 tonne of shredding. Now this is a quite a substantial machine. This machine also does. This is why it's a challenge for councils, because when they did this project, I did ask the guys, and this shreds mattresses as well, so it cuts the wire and everything, and the machine was worth about $1.6 million. So it's quite a large machine, but that's what you need to do this sort of job. So 650 tonnes, 38,000 to shred, 330 to have it transported. Huge challenge.
Yep.
330. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are they predominantly passenger car tyres or OTRs or?
Sorry?
Were they predominantly a passenger car tyre, or were they?
A bit of everything. So they're truck tyres, passenger tyres, could be tractor tyres. We don't really have mining in any of those big machinery that we have in any of our 6 shires, but we do have resources. So the biggest would be loader tyres and things like that. So mainly, I would say mainly car tyres and truck tyres would be the majority of those.
Yeah, because it says on AI that 50,000 to 60,000 passenger car tyres would make up about 600 tonnes. So you're dealing with quite a high volume. Yep.
It's quite a large pile of tyres there. And once again, that's in, we shredded nearly 500 tonnes here. It still didn't take the pile that we had, and we still have quite a substantial pile. So, we would be looking for, we're looking around for any sort of grant funding where we could have another go at these sort of projects, because once again, they're not buried, they're just sitting on top. So once again, it's so important for us to find space in those landfills to give us lifespan, because after our waste facility is about, I would say, from roughly probably 10 hectares. Once that's full, we've got to buy the land off the state. We're looking at over $1 million in the Merway Shire to buy enough land for a waste facility. So we're just trying to get the maximum amount we can out of that site. So we're looking at, I think we're looking around 40 years now with the work we've done. But we still have a problem with green waste and how we deal with that. And not only that, how do we deal with these tyres? So, yeah.
Sure. Anything else? No, I think you got through that unscathed. Thank you very much for your time today. Really do appreciate it.
Can I just add just one thing? Where we went from, and sorry, apologies, but where we started with this, when we put that motion forward, if we look at the very successful container for exchange, and I know state development are working around these lines, but we feel as if that, realistically, these are big companies that are bringing these tyres into Australia. We know we just can't make money, and we know it's a pretty challenging space there at the moment. But seriously, we've got to think about how much money these people are actually making by importing these in. We realistically need to be charging them more, and that money put aside so that all small local governments, because it's put on our lap, how do we move forward? And that's unfortunately the only way we can do this is through funding, as you heard. There's no way we can do our source revenue to even get close to dealing with this problem. But we're thinking, I spoke to State Development this morning, and they're saying even just a program with the containers for exchange, where it's tidied up the bottles and the plastic bottles. But can we do this, and especially in areas where they do have illegal dumping? But once again, it comes back, unfortunately, it falls back on local government. And who do we look for? We need the federal government to help us in this space to manage it. But thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. So, again, thank you for your attendance today. And if you've been asked to provide any additional information, please forward to the Secretariat by 10 July 2026. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence, and we'll have the opportunity to request corrections to transcription errors. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. 5 minutes ahead. No pressure, you just got to bring it home now, right?
Last one of the day, right?
You are.
Oh, that's okay. It's number 31. I'm reading that wrong. You didn't do this, huh? My office. No. Ah, that's all right. It's a Okay, I now welcome representative from S&J Australian Scrap Tyre Disposal to give evidence at this public hearing today. For the Hansard record, would you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear today?
Yep, so I'm Joshua Hayes, I'm representing S&J Australian Scrap Tyre Disposals. We're a second generation family business involved in the collection of scrap tyres and supplying various recyclers. We had a long relationship with Chip Tyre that's recently ended with them being closed down, and we're currently working predominantly with Tyre Cycle.
Fantastic. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise you that these hearings are a formal proceeding of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as a proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. Would you like to make an opening statement?
I think that's pretty
Much covered in the submission. That's all. All right. Well, we can just jump straight to questions if that's all right. You highlight strong collection rates in your submission, but ongoing illegal activity. So how do these two trends coexist in the market?
Probably through a lack of enforcement of existing regulation. They're not high volumes, they're just annoying. I'd much rather pick those same tyres up from a tyre store than out of a muddy ditch or off the side of a road somewhere. It was only last month that we picked up 2 truck and trailer loads out of the Sunshine Coast in the state forest for Detsy, and then last week we did another truck and trailer load from sort of similar locations. And then this week we worked with the Logan City Council. Someone had dumped, yet to get the final figure on how many tonnes, but it's got to be probably 30 tonnes in the Albert River. So that involved collecting with a barge with an excavator on it, loading them onto a bin on the barge and then getting them back to the boat ramp in a skip on the boat ramp. Because they'd been in the river, they're all muddy and not very pleasant to handle. But so they're much more recyclable if we can collect them from the tyre store. If the regulators drop the ball and don't enforce the regulations we've got and they end up in the ditch, it's worse for everyone. It's more expensive, obviously, because there's a lot more work involved.
So, to what extent do you think enforcement rather than infrastructure is a constraint in achieving better outcomes?
I think it's enforcement, but also there are problems in the Queensland regulation. The collections that we perform, there's nothing sent back to the generator or to the receiver if you submit by an agent's agreement. So there should be something from the department going in both directions just to keep collectors honest, and currently there's not. So it does leave it open for someone to walk into a tyre store with an ERA 57, a licensed collector, show them the licence, get the tyre store to sign an agent's agreement, and for all intents and purposes they appear the same as us. That collector can then send in someone to pick the tyres up, kick the tyres off in a river or in the state forest, and deliver a percentage to a legitimate recycler. And if they do any waste tracking with the department, all would appear legitimate. But if they don't do any waste tracking with the department, there's no one really looking. There's no zero balance reporting. It's if you don't submit anything, they just assume you've not collected anything. And that's a real gap.
You're only operating in Queensland?
We do a little bit in New South Wales, but predominantly Queensland.
How do you think the technology's changed since you first opened up back in the early 90s there?
Well, the technology we use in our business has changed significantly. I don't know how much has changed sort of on the other side of the fence.
So what are you seeing now? Is it just cleaner, better handling, or better machinery?
Well, we operate, well, we're working towards having all of our fleet as walking floor trucks, so that reduces the manual handling in the unloading component. When we started out, everything was loaded by hand, whereas now we'll tow a forklift on a pig trailer behind one of those walking floor trucks, and the truck tyres are loaded with a carpet pole over the top, so there's no manual handling in our local truck tyre operation at all. All of that comes at a cost. I mean, a walking floor's probably 100,000 more than a standard truck to do the same job, but it's much better for the safety and it's much easier to do it that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Would that be sort of one of your biggest health and safety risks, or?
Manual handling is, it would be our biggest safety risk, yeah.
Al?
But most injuries haven't occurred lifting truck tyres. It's been, getting out of the truck cold and lifting a car tyre. Yep.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of manual unloadings where they just about bounced on the poor bloke's head standing on the ground.
Beg your pardon?
Where people have been throwing them out the back of a truck and nearly knocking one of their
We've
colleagues.
seen some of them falling. And do you want to make any comments in relation to the effectiveness of the tyre product stewardship scheme? How's it working? How's it not working?
Well, I see the TSA really as driven by manufacturers rather than driven by the collection and recycling industry. ATRA is probably more of a body for the collection and recycling industry. We obviously work hand in hand with the TSA because we solve a problem that they have as far as the stewardship of the tyres once they come to end of life. But there's not a tyre recycling representative on the TSA board. It's a manufacturer's body.
That's been raised a couple of times, actually, yeah.
Do you think that you could get a mandatory scheme that works with accredited tyre recyclers? Would that make business decisions for you easier, knowing you'd have, guaranteed stock and consistency?
I would be hesitant to. We've got a very high collection rate in Australia for passenger light truck and truck tyres. Mining tyres, definitely I would be open to the idea of a scheme. But at the moment, mining tyres are predominantly buried in pit. I believe all you would need to do is grandfather that clause so it's not available for any new mine that comes online, and then possibly put some sort of an incentive in there where a bounty is collected on the import of a mining tyre, and the miner either recovers that or they bury it in pit or use it as a traffic cone on site or whatever they want to do. That could go towards driving the outcomes that you want in mining tyres, whereas we're already there with passenger and light truck. I think they just need to, a few minor tweaks on the regulation and better enforcement.
What sort of factors do you think are limiting the domestic demand for products such as, rubber crumb, despite, the existing supply capacity?
Government's the biggest procurer, and they don't use a lot of it in some states. They use a little bit, they use some in Victoria, but we're not reinventing the wheel with rubber crumb into roads. It's been used around the world for many, many, many years or decades. So it just needs to be specced into roads as a matter of course. There's capacity in the recyclers to supply into that market.
And you've got a consistency to supply of product to be able to keep that right.
Well, there's no shortage of the tyres, so it's just a matter of the demand being there for the crumb.
This might be a bit left field, but with Chip Tyre closing down, they had a working to waste energy plant there that did the oil, steel and carbon black.
Yes.
What do you think will happen?
Well, what to that plant or to the site? Or they didn't close of their own free will. I believe they were unable to secure a lease for that site. You'd have to talk to them about that, but I don't think that it was. I don't think they were done right by.
That closing down is not true for someone else to fill that void, or take that machinery and process and utilise it, or were they getting the outcomes that they were hoping to get out of it?
The same thing, you'd have to ask them. They hadn't put a lot of volume through it, so I don't know whether, and I don't know how movable the equipment is once you've heated up those reactors. I understand the tiles on the inside would, but it's certainly, that was, we were excited when they were getting that up and running. Yep.
Do you think that we should have all tyre recyclers should be accredited to a national program? Would that work closely with
all tyre collectors and recyclers?
Recyclers, yeah.
I think they should all be accredited. I mean, there shouldn't be unlicensed operators running around picking up tyres and kicking them into rivers. That's, yep. They should all be held to a standard.
Are you seeing a growing trend of sham operators, or?
I wouldn't say a growing trend. I mean, that underbelly's always been there, and that they'll move from industry to industry wherever they can make a quick buck. There was quite a few years ago, the regulation was removed to require a licence if you were only storing the tyres, not processing them. All of a sudden, there were a lot of sheds and fields and whatever else filled up with scrap tyres and people disappearing in the night, and then they moved on to whatever else. Yeah. I don't know whether they own cigarette shops now.
Have you got any thoughts on how we could strengthen enforcement for illegal dumping and stockpiling? Like, do the current regulations not work? What would they need? Do they need to be tweaked? Do they need to be a national approach?
I think a consistent approach across the country would be good. There's definitely a lag between when something gets reported through to the department and when they close down. So a rogue operator can do a lot of damage just going out to market. That if they don't have the same costs as a legitimate operator, they'll often go out and use price as a lever to get the customers to begin with no ability to then on-process them. So there's been many landlords clean up a shed or a paddock from a failed tyre recycler. We've been involved in many of those cleanups over the years. But I think back to your question was about whether the enforcement is lacking. I think I don't know if there's enough. There's certainly not enough information sort of put back to retailers and back to the recyclers. I think if those loops were closed, then an enforcement officer could go into a tyre store and say, we can see you haven't been disposing of any tyres. I can see a pile of tyres out there. What's going on? Or even using the data that we supply. I mean, to do a tyres over time calculation. I mean, if we've been supplying someone with collection services and we've been picking up, a tonne a week for 52 weeks, and then they stop using us in 3 weeks, they should have 3 tonne there, or they should have another supplier with invoices to show that they've been using someone else.
It seems that if they're not registered, they sort of fall through the system.
There's no checking on that. I don't believe so. Yeah.
So is that like a serial number it needs when it enters the country, or?
I don't think that would work for tyres. They're just so. We couldn't scan individual tyres on. I don't believe that'd work. But I think if you were tracking tyres into a tyre store, buy 100 in, you should be disposing of 100. Then.
Yep. Okay.
That's one of the suggestions. Like if you had a mandatory scheme, say the importers pay it.
Yep.
Onto the end retailer pays it, and then I come into your tyre store and do exactly that. You've sold 100 tyres. Where's the ones you've taken back? And if not, then there's the financial penalty there of, well, you don't get your rebate if you haven't got your tyres.
Yeah, I'm certainly not. We're not anti that, but I don't think any of the schemes that are in place overseas would be fit for purpose. Price is one lever that we have that we can pull. If I go into a tyre store that I can load a walking floor truck with 800 EPU, which is approximately 200 truck tyres in 15 minutes, I wouldn't want to think that that tyre store is paying the same amount per EPU as someone that I've got to do in a 1 tonne ute and get 80 EPU in the same amount of time. It just wouldn't make sense. So we use price to, so that people will store the tyres in a way that makes it easier for us to collect them and also makes them more recyclable as well. So we've got to charge more for dirty tyres because the recycler has to put in more work to process them into a recyclable product. So if you would, the free market leaves those levers in there, but if you were to have that the importer has paid an amount, and it would need to be an amount that the generator's not going to want to walk away from. So if the retailer, if the importer paid $10, $20, whatever the number is, and then the dodgy collector goes in and says, "I'll pick your tyres up for $1," well, the retailer's then going, "Well, if I use you, I don't get my $10. So that's cost me $5. It hasn't saved me any money. Whereas at the moment, if I'm 4 and someone comes in offering it for 2, well, they've saved $2 on every tyre. And if they don't believe they'll be caught, well,
Can you tell us a bit about the difference in the processes for passenger car versus off-road tyre recycling?
Well, they're two completely sort of different tyres. Like the handling alone, I mean, obviously, any of that mining and OTR stuff's all no manual handling. It's got to be handled with a machine. I think the funny thing with the mining tyres is often if they're buying another tyre in to replace one that's on the equipment, they're going in on a vehicle that's got a specialised cradle like you would see pools going around on, where they might fit 2 or 3 tyres on a semi-trailer. If they're not being recycled, that truck's going back out empty. So it is a real bit of a waste of the transport. And sorry, I thought that was turned off, but it wasn't.
Well, it's one of the things we hear, like with mining tyres in particular, trucks go up full and come back empty.
Yep.
Can they come back full with the second-hand tyres?
Well, that would be, ideal. I mean, there's capacity in tyre recyclers for, I mean, as part of ATRA, I've spoken to people in WA that have invested a lot of money in tyre recycling plants over there, and build it and they will come, but they haven't come yet. So it's an expensive piece of equipment to have mothballed until regulations change.
Do you think there should be a bigger or a regulation focus on banning the burial of?
I really don't see that being necessary. It should be so unpalatable that we're burying the tyres. Often, if they're pulling coal out of the ground, they're burying tyres that may have a higher calorific value than the coal they're pulling out. I mean, it's not. I don't know. I wouldn't have thought it would be something that miners would be standing in front of saying this is a good thing. This is something that we should be working away from. And I get that if you've done your costings based on being able to bury them in pit, run that mine out on that. But I believe that should be a grandfathered licence condition that's available.
Yep.
So.
Fantastic. Got 1 or 2 more. So I was asking, what would you say would be your 3 biggest challenges you face as a recycler at the moment? What would they be?
I think any small business or any business would say, getting good labour. We've got good staff, but getting more good staff would be good. It is challenging to, yeah.
It's not the shiniest and prettiest job in the world.
No, but yeah. But it's honest work, and you get paid every fortnight. And you know, if you compare it to other HR truck driving jobs, you know,
Yep.
some of them are, you know, parked up if it rains, whereas we're out there getting wet, but we're, you know, working rain, hail, and shine, and we didn't slow down through COVID. It was, yeah, it was actually quite busy through COVID. There's a lot of. Yeah, I think there are a lot of people that were able to pull a bit of money out of super and tinker on cars and whatever else, and yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I think I did more engine rebuilds during COVID lockdowns than I've done for the decade.
Probably had the time at home, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, my children actually, yeah, look back fondly on that. They really enjoyed the time at COVID where we were all together and not able to go out and do things. So, yeah.
It's a funny thing, yeah, when you go back and look at that and you think, you know, you did your hours exercise every day and you walked around your neighbourhood and got to know your neighbours more than you do, and
Yep.
yeah, it was a lot of. Not that I'm advocating we do it again, just to
No,
but
well, we've let this hunter virus out now.
oh, there'll be something else come along, absolutely.
Well, it could be the fuel that'll keep us at home. So.
You've talked about improving enforcement on federal export controls.
It just seems. I mean, obviously they're trying to stop cigarettes coming into the country. It's the feds have got a lot on their plate, but I don't know whether you could do better controls by auditing recyclers and going in to see that they've got equipment that can make compliant shred. Because if you've got a spec for what compliant shred is, and people are trying to produce it with a machine that's clearly unable, it's not going to happen. And if you pick up 4 or 6 or however many of their boxes, yeah, it's a numbers game. Yeah. So I think
The 150 mils about the biggest one, isn't it?
150. Yeah. And there's sort of different markets for different size shreds for export, but yeah.
All good.
I think I only gave you one challenge, but yeah, the staff biggest challenge, and then the next one would be, we weren't able to secure much additional funds from councils we do a lot of councils, but when the price spiked for the fuel, there just didn't seem to be a good mechanism to pass that on that they were able to get behind.
That was it was a huge issue for the transport industry as a whole.
Yep, and I don't think we're past it yet.
No.
Yeah, it's all still there. The only reduction we had was through various governments, releasing out of their reserves and a little bit of government relief, which has got the price back down to close to where it was. But yeah, as the strait closes again, if the reserves run dry, well, every shock is passed on, isn't it? So.
Yeah, we seen that. Obviously, with transport, the road user charge stuff was knocked off, excise was knocked down to try and help. But you know, if you're loading 1,200 litres into a truck,
yep, yeah, well, that was 800, and some of the trucks are doing that every other day. So,
yeah. No, fantastic, mate. You got an early mark. Thank you for that.
No, all right, thank you.
It's been sensational. I really appreciate it. So thank you for your attendance today. And if you've been asked to provide any further information, please forward it to the Secretariat by 10 July 2026. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript so you can of your evidence and have the opportunity to request any corrections or transcription errors. And there being no further witnesses, I declare the public hearing closed and our next meeting for Wednesday, 24 June 2026 at 8:30 a.m. in Committee Room R2R2.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.